When you picture a Viking, you picture a horned helmet, a burning village, and a scream. Almost none of that is true. The horns are a myth invented by an opera costume designer 1,000 years later. The real Viking spent far more of his life knee-deep in mud on a farm than raiding anyone. This is one ordinary day in his world. Meet Ulf. He's not a king or a berserker, he's a farmer, which is what most Vikings actually were. He owns a bit of land, some animals, and a share in a boat. For a few weeks each summer he'll go raiding across the sea. The other 50 weeks of the year he's fighting a much older enemy, the weather. Ulf lives in a longhouse, a single long room built of stone, timber, and thick walls of turf, with a living roof of growing grass to hold in the heat. There are no chimneys and few windows, so inside it's dark, smoky, and warm, and he doesn't live there alone. Under that one long roof lives Ulf's whole world. His wife, his children, a grandparent or two, a couple of farm hens, and at the far end, behind a low wall, the animals. In a Norwegian winter, sharing your house with your cows isn't strange. It's central heating. Ulf wakes before full light on a low bench near the fire. The first job of the day belongs to whoever banks the coals overnight, because starting a fire from scratch, with flint and a scrap of dry fungus, is slow, cold misery. Keeping the flame alive is a household religion. Vikings ate 2 meals a day, and breakfast, the day meal, is thick and sour, skyr, a strained yogurt cheese with flatbread and a cup of ale. Water could make you sick, so weak ale was the everyday drink for everyone. Ulf fuels up because the farm doesn't run itself. Outside, the actual Viking economy begins. Barley and oats to grow, hay to cut, cows and sheep and goats and pigs to tend, iron to smelt, wool to spin. The growing season this far north is brutally short, so every dry day is a race. The raiding happens in summer for one very practical reason: that's the gap after planting and before harvest. While Ulf farms, his wife runs the farm, and that's not a figure of speech. A Norse wife carried the keys to the household stores on her belt as a symbol of real authority. Viking women could own property, request a divorce, and manage the entire estate for the months their husbands were away at sea. For the age, that was radical. As Ulf works, a neighbor leans over the boundary wall and makes a joke, a sharp one, about Ulf's father in front of the farm hands. Ulf goes still. In this world, an insult isn't just rude, a man's reputation is his most valuable possession. He could answer with his knife. Instead, he answers with something far more Viking. Hold that thought. So why does a comfortable farmer sail off to raid? Land. In Norway, good farmland is scarce and gets divided smaller with every generation. Across the sea sit rich, poorly defended monasteries and towns stuffed with silver. One good summer voyage can buy the land, and status a lifetime of farming never will. Raiding is a startup. None of it works without the ship. The longship is the Viking superweapon, long, light, and clinker-built from overlapping oak planks that let the whole hull flex over waves instead of fighting them. It's fast under sail, rows when there's no wind, and floats in barely a meter of water, so it can run straight up onto a beach or deep up a river. Ulf's crew isn't an army. It's a group of free farmers and neighbors who each own a share of the voyage and a seat at the oars. There's a captain, but decisions are argued out loud, and every man expects his cut of whatever they find. They aren't soldiers taking orders, they are partners taking risks. They have no compass, that's still centuries away. Instead, they navigate by the sun's height, the stars, the flight of birds, the color of the water, and the memory of coastlines passed down as spoken directions. A good navigator is worth more than a good fighter, because the sea kills far more Vikings than any enemy ever will. The open sea crossing is cold, wet, and long. There are no cabins and no comfort. The men row and bail and sleep in the open boat under wool and leather, sharing salt fish and hard bread. This, not the fighting, is the real test of a Viking. The patience to survive days on a heaving gray sea and still be able to stand when you land. At dawn they find it, a coastal monastery, rich with silver and grain, guarded by monks and farmers rather than soldiers. To the Vikings, this isn't a holy place, it's an unlocked storehouse. The whole strategy is speed. Land fast, take what's portable, and be gone before anyone powerful can gather a real defense. The raid is over almost before it begins. The Vikings move fast, grabbing silver, tools, livestock, and sometimes captives to sell, then pull back to the ship. It's frightening and it's real, but it's also a smash and grab, not a war. The terror was the tactic. A reputation for sudden violence meant that next time people might simply pay them to leave. Here's the part the move is skip. Vikings were traders far more than raiders. The same ships carried furs, amber, and enslaved people down the rivers of Russia all the way to Constantinople and the markets of the Islamic world. Arab silver coins have been dug up by the thousands in Sweden. Ulf is as likely to sell you something as to rob you. Weeks later, Ulf's ship noses back into the home fjord, riding low with silver and goods. There's no medal and no parade, just the farm, exactly where he left it, and a harvest that won't wait. The legend sails home and immediately picks up a hay rake. But first, there's unfinished business. Remember that insult? Ulf didn't forget it, he took it to the Thing. The Thing was a regular open-air assembly where free men gathered to make laws and settle disputes out loud in public. Vikings were astonishingly litigious. They'd rather beat you in a lawsuit than in a fight. The neighbor is ordered to pay a fine in silver for the insult, and Ulf's honor is restored legally. Ulf's gods aren't distant or gentle. Odin trades an eye for wisdom and collects the worthy dead. Thor swings a hammer against the giants of chaos. And every Norseman knows the story ends badly at Ragnarok. The gods themselves die fighting a battle they can't win. The lesson isn't to avoid your fate, it's to meet it well. Vikings could write, using runes, an alphabet of straight lines designed to be carved fast into wood, bone, and stone. Most of it is wonderfully ordinary. Names, ownership, trade notes, and rude jokes. But the grand runestones served one serious purpose, to make sure a person's name and their deeds were not forgotten. Night falls and the day ends where every good Viking day ends, in the hall by the fire with a horn of ale. This is the real reward: warmth, a full belly, and company. The hall is where bonds are made, deals are struck, marriages arranged, and reputations built one story at a time. An old man stands and tells a saga, a long, sprawling story of feuds, voyages, and clever ancestors, half history and half legend, kept alive entirely by memory. Vikings left almost no books. Everything they valued about themselves was carried forward in performances exactly like this one by the fire. And underneath all of it, the farming, the raiding, the trading, the law, sits one Viking idea above the rest. Cattle die, kinsmen die, and one day you die too. But a good reputation, the old poem says, never dies. That's what Ulf is really working for, not the silver, the story people will tell after he's gone. Within a couple of centuries, Ulf's world faded. Vikings settled the lands they raided, became Christian, and turned into the kings of England, the dukes of Normandy, the traders of Dublin and Kiev. They didn't vanish, they became everyone around them. The farmer raiders quietly built a chunk of the modern map. So the Viking wasn't the monster on the helmet or the horns he never wore. He was a farmer who could kill, a trader who could pray, a neighbor who'd sue you, and a poet who feared being forgotten. One ordinary day, 1100 years ago, mud, sea, silver, and a story worth telling, which it turns out was the whole point.